Good to go.
Good deal, guys. Seriously, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm excited to get in front of people and talk about a few things I really enjoy. Food. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And also talking is one of my favorite things in the world. Anyone who knows me knows that far too well. I did want to ask, first off though, are we going with red, blue, or black to start? It's crucially important.
Blue.
We got a couple of votes for blue. I'm going to start with blue then. So I kind of wanted to start with a question. I'm curious of everyone that's here, who here is who played sports, maybe back in maybe in high school or something, but played sports. Yeah. So most all of us, good deal. I wanted actually to put this question out there for you guys because I played some sports in high school, and I wanted to throw this question out there and see what you guys thought. I wanted to ask you guys how many sports you think I lettered in high school. Okay. So 4 years of high school playing some sports. I'll be honest, I played more sports than I lettered in. My high school was just playing as a senior and being on varsity and things like that. So I'm curious what you guys think, what you would guess in terms of how many sports I lettered in high school.
What does that mean, lettered in?
4.
Lettered in. So played on varsity my senior year.
So if you you went to Needham High, you get an N on your varsity jacket.
Yeah.
So
we got
0
for 4. We got 2. We apparently have Matt has no faith in me as an athlete. So 4, 2, 3, 8. Oh goodness, that would be impressive. I think I got probably the most athletic guy I know only lettered in 1 because he ended up focusing on football. So 8 would be really difficult. Actually, Matt, you're right. It's a big goose egg. What a lot of people don't realize is that I am not a naturally fit person. I am a natural chubster. Most of my life has been spent on the wrong side of overweight and obese. Vast majority of my life. So all through high school, I was the little chubby kid that was chilling in my room on my computer playing online video games, not the kid who was dominating on the sports field. I liked to pretend to be athletic sometimes, but I was not even close to athletic. And what's funny is, Adam guessed right off the bat here, he guessed at 4. And when people see me now, they get this impression of me, and they don't realize where I kind of started off. Naturally chubby kid, and I was that way up until college. Now, see, what happened was in college, things kind of started to change. They didn't change necessarily overnight by any means, but they started to change. So what happened is I went to college, it was my freshman year. I just come off of a desk job. I was sitting around. I wasn't active whatsoever. So I was the biggest I had ever been as an adult. As a younger kid, I was very, very round. I actually once asked my mom when I was a toddler, I looked up at her apparently and asked, "Mom, when are my cheeks gonna go away?" Because I had these massive cheeks. I was just a naturally chubby kid. So then in college, I started exercising consistently. I exercised a little bit before. I did play 1 year of high school football. So I did play some sports in high school. I got killed. I was super unathletic. Everyone was faster, bigger, and hit harder than me. And I was like, no thanks, I'm never doing that again. And then I went and played in the orchestra and the jazz band instead. It was far less intense. So I get to college and I start exercising consistently. And it was interesting because there were some changes that happened. And when I first started, it was like you would expect, right? I didn't have a ton of energy. I couldn't lift a lot of weight. I couldn't really perform that well. I was on an intramural ultimate frisbee team, right? And I can remember being out of breath within a couple minutes of playing. It's ultimate frisbee. It isn't the most intense sporting event in the world, but I was tired and I struggled with it because I was completely out of shape. So I started exercising consistently. I can remember the day Nathan Wallace, who was the team captain, one day after we had played, "I've never seen you playing so athletically." I was like, "I know, I can finally breathe for the first time ever." I actually had exercise-induced asthma for a really long time. I had asthma as a kid, worked my way out of asthma as I grew up, but then I had exercise-induced asthma, so I'd go running and I'd be huffing and puffing. One second, I'll be right there, guys. It was a real struggle for me to do anything athletic. But obviously now things are a little bit different. I started exercising consistently and made some changes, but it was when I started to employ proper nutrition habits that things really took off. So I started moving, and I started exercising more. I started lifting some weights. I was playing on that Ultimate Frisbee team, and it was great. It was fine. It was dandy. But it wasn't until I started learning more about nutrition and I started really applying those proper principles of nutrition that I was able to run faster, jump higher, perform better in Ultimate Frisbee, or just like playing football with friends. Or I haven't really played that much rugby, but I wish I had. It's fun. I've enjoyed, but it ends up turning into football anyway because it's a bunch of American kids pretending like they know what they're doing.
We do have some openings.
But I was able to perform better. I looked better. I had more energy, and I was just downright happy. So all of these changes were able to happen simply by applying proper principles of nutrition and exercise. And nutrition is where we really want to have our focus today. I'm really excited to write on this easel, by the way. Yeah, this is gonna be good. So sports nutrition is where we want to focus, right? How exciting. So we got sports nutrition. Now I'm curious, guys, how many of us here that are sitting here, let's do it by a show of hands, who would like to be able to run faster, jump higher, be like Benny the Jet Rodriguez and Sandlot and have all those great benefits, also be happier, have more energy, and look downright sexier, right? Like, who wouldn't want that? Exactly. Like, it's something that everyone's looking for, and especially with you guys on Valkyries, like, it's key to performance, right? You need that proper nutrition. You need the right fuel in the car. I don't know, has anyone ever driven like a really nice car before? Yeah, we've got the German here. So I want to see here who's driven the nicest car. I probably have not. But like, what's the nicest car you guys have driven?
2015 Lexus.
2015 Lexus.
I drove a Ford Mustang.
Okay, that's solid. Evans, anything fancy? Camry? On the Civic?
Various, just luxury cars all my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Marlena, I feel like your hand shot up, so I feel like Marlena's got like the nicest car.
Yeah, that's
She's sitting on something special over here.
I'm pretty BMW for a while, and then also Alfa Romeo in Italy.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Chevy Tahoe.
Okay, yeah. I tried the Camry, so I understand that. There was one time I had, it was an ex-girlfriend of mine. Things ended well. So we were like chatting. I was visiting home. We went to grab lunch, and she was like, "Oh, you can drive my car home." I was like, "Okay." I didn't know why she said that at first. Super nice, sporty Lexus. It was beautiful, super fun to drive. When you drive a nice car, even if it's just a nicer car than you're used to, like, it's a fun thing to drive. But there's something interesting that happens with nice cars. They all recommend, or some even require, premium fuel, right? And that's how it goes with our bodies. We want your bodies to function like a high-performance vehicle, like a high-octane BMW or Lexus or whatever it might be. And so we need to give it the proper fuel as we go. So simply going and putting whatever we want in the tank of a high-performance vehicle isn't going to go as well as if we put high-performance fuel in that vehicle. So that high-performance fuel is a little bit of what we want to talk about today. So nutrition in general. I'm curious what you guys have heard, or what you guys have been led to believe, or what even stuff that you know. What sorts of dietary practices are healthy? What sorts of things, or what sorts of popular diets out there are good? I'm curious what you guys, where you guys are at mindset-wise, and I might be blowing your mind in a few minutes. Just saying. So what sorts of diets have you heard of? What sorts of diets work well and are effective and would be good for, hypothetically, a team of rugby players? And Marlena, you're not allowed to answer because you would have all of the answers.
We've carbo loaded the night before.
So okay, so carb loading for sure. Robert Riley, your hands are up.
35% protein, 35% fat, 30% carbs.
That was 35% protein, 35% fat, and then 30% carbs. I wonder where you got those numbers, Robert. Any other diets you guys have heard of? Maybe like paleo or some.
Yeah.
Heard of that? Heard good things about it? Decent things about it? Bad things about it?
I've heard very sales pitchy type.
Okay.
I jumped on it for 6 months with some coworkers.
And good?
It was good, a lot of effort though.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put like a question mark. Paleo.
I saw people like look at cheese when they were on paleo with sorrow in their eyes.
I do like me some cheese. Any other diets we've heard of, things that you think, oh yeah, that's a popular diet out there that would be effective, that would be something that's healthy.
Atkins.
Atkins, that's a lot of steak, which I'm a happy guy about. Atkins.
A Mediterranean diet.
Someone say South Beach.
That's
I just put SoBe. We're just gonna call that good, South Beach. Oh, I hope it's mildly legible for you guys tuning in. But, so there are all these different things, right? There's so much confusion out there about nutrition. There's so much different information that we've all heard. So there are things like paleo, and paleo, honestly, a lot of the time, paleo diets are very high in fat, low in carbohydrates. But there are other diets out there that are high in carbohydrates and low in fat. And there are other diets out there that are just like drinking nothing but protein, or other diets out there where you just drink lemon juice, cayenne pepper, maple syrup, and a bunch of water, and that's all you have. There are all sorts of weird things out there, right?
I like maple syrup.
Maple syrup is delightful. It's one of the 5 basic food groups. I heard you talking about those earlier. Buddy else hooked me up good with some nutrition information. We're going to be getting into it later, don't worry. There's all this different information out there, and all of these seemingly opposite things. So you think like carb loading before a game for rugby. Yeah, something people talk about carb loading all the time, right? And then a paleo diet is like almost the exact opposite of carb loading. So which is actually the best? Which is going to be, you know, the way that we should actually approach sports nutrition and being able to eat to perform, you know, filling our bodies with the right fuel. So I'm going to put a phrase up here on page 2 of the easel. So excited about this easel. We're going to switch to red now. Hope that's all right.
I like that. That's how we do it.
So who has seen something like this, read something like this online, or who has even like believed something like this at some point while they've been trying to, you know, maybe clean up their diet and eat better or anything like that? Hear it all the time, right? It was on Mean Girls? Probably. It's butter and carb, right? But yeah, put that little caveat underneath it. The thing is, carbs are not the enemy. Carbs could not be further from the enemy, especially for you guys here as the Valkyries. Carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are actually our friend. So I mean, honestly, it's so widely accepted that carbs, oh no, carbs are bad. You can't have carbs. Carbs just make you fat. Now, overeating anything will make you gain weight and make you gain fat potentially, absolutely. Whether it's protein, carbs, or fats, right? So overeating carbohydrates is going to be bad, but having the proper amount of carbohydrates for the amount of work that you're doing, that's okay. So that's why things like loading up on carbohydrates before, you know, say someone's running a marathon, that's going to be different than someone who's just working at their computer all day, loading up on carbohydrates. It's going to be a completely different reaction within the body. Basically, the way to look at carbohydrates is energy for the body, specifically for muscles, okay? So when we use our muscles, when we exercise, when we're being athletic, so when we're playing a game of rugby, or when we're here at TFW for either one of the conditioning classes or one of the exercise class, one of the more like strength-related training days when like Robert Riley lifts hundreds of pounds off the ground. We'll shout out for Robert Riley. But carbohydrates are able to replenish the fuel that we use. So in our muscles, we've got any carbohydrates that we eat and consume, whether it's a simple sugar or something more complex like brown rice, for example. It's going to break down into sugars. And there is what is called muscle glycogen, which is a simple sugar. It's broken down from the complex carbohydrates or even the simple like just sugars, and it breaks it down into glycogen. That glycogen gets stored in the muscles. Now, when you use your muscles, it's using that glycogen as a source of energy to be able to perform the way that you're performing. Whether you're running a sprint or you're deadlifting a few hundred pounds, muscle glycogen is being used. Now, if you do something that's an intense bout of exercise for a period of time, however long it might be, you're going to use muscle glycogen. Now, when that muscle glycogen is depleted, it needs to be replenished. So that's where like post-workout nutrition comes into play. Now, with that carb loading, which you mentioned, Evans, and it's something that a lot of people do, by saturating your cells with as much glycogen as you can fit in them, you're gonna be able to perform better. You're gonna have more of that energy stored up. You basically fueled the tank, and now you're ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna probably be going back to that car analogy more than once during the rest of the time today. But that's how it goes, right? So we've got that energy that's in there. But what's interesting is how much this doesn't necessarily, it's like people get caught up in the fads, right? Because this whole carbs are the enemy thing has become so popular. Even someone like LeBron James this last off season was like, you know what, I'm going low carb on my diet. And he did not look nearly as big and as strong as LeBron James normally looks at the start of the season. And honestly, I haven't been following basketball as well as I should. I moved across the country. It's been a busy, hectic few months. But at least at the beginning of the season, he wasn't performing like LeBron James normally performs either. Now, I can't put it all on having a low-carb diet or anything like that, but he severely restricted his carbohydrates, and it made visual differences. He wasn't as big, he wasn't as strong, and he wasn't performing in his sport nearly as well. It's because he wasn't having the proper amount of fuel, and he wasn't necessarily filling up with premium fuel when he did. So those carbohydrates are going to be critical for that high performance. And people who have been led to believe that carbs are the enemy and that carbs aren't bad, I mean, they're just being fed complete BS. And so what I want to do with you guys is talk through a little bit more of why carbs are good and the best way to have your carbohydrates to help benefit you in your performance with rugby or here at TFW even. So having those carbohydrates are going to be good. Having too many, not going to be good. We already talked about that. So it all depends on what you're doing. So there's this beautiful thing out there. It's called carb cycling. Now, carb cycling is simple yet mildly complex. The way that carb cycling works is you break down, you basically look at your exercise week, your schedule, your split, whatever you want to call it. So you can look at it, you can be like, all right, so let's say, for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going and I've got rugby practice or whatever it is. I'm going and I'm running, I'm doing some sprints, whatever it might be. You've got whatever you're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Let's say Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you're lifting weights. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's more cardio, it's more sprinting, it's more conditioning. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you're lifting weights. Now, depending on which days you're working harder, it's gonna determine how much fuel you need on which day. So you break down your week and you look at which days are gonna be high carb days and which days are going to be low carb days. And you can even break it down further and have like high, middle, low. But for the sake of simplicity, carb cycling, high carb days, low carb days, essentially giving your body the fuel that it needs on the days that it needs it. So like we said, if you're gearing up for like on the day of a game, okay, I would make that a high carb day, absolutely, so that you're able to perform at your best. Now let's say you are sitting at your desk at work all day and you aren't going to be exercising at all, which I wouldn't recommend. But let's say it's just going to be one of those days, right? They all happen. That would be more of a low carb day. For me, I generally have like Sunday as a rest day. I just kick it at home most of the day. I'm chilling on the couch. I'm watching Netflix. That's a low carb day for me. Mondays, I come in here and I squat heavy. That's a high carb day for me, right? So you want to give your body the fuel that it needs when it needs it. So that way you're just keeping the tank ready to rock, ready to roll at all times, but you're not overfilling. And gas is expensive anyway, so you don't want to fill that tank up too much. One interesting thing Stan and I have actually started doing, and Marlena might judge us for this just a little bit, but we've had donuts and deadlifts. So Fridays, Stan and I are deadlifting every Friday night right now, and we have donuts during the day. Now, I'm not saying donuts are the healthiest thing in the world, but those carbohydrates are being put to good use with the deadlifting that's happening. So we have that high carb day. Having those donuts definitely helps us hit our carbohydrate numbers that we're trying to hit, and we're able to perform at our peak because we've got that fuel, right? Now, this doesn't mean like go eat whatever you want, whenever you want on days that you're exercising. There's a little bit more to it than, okay? So, yeah, so I mean, hello potatoes, pasta bread, and things like that, but just don't go crazy with it. Like, we don't want just, oh, well, we got a match tonight. I'm gonna eat whatever I want. We're playing rugby, or I'm going to lift, or whatever it is. Like, no, you gotta obviously keep things within reason. Remember, you want that premium fuel and not just donuts. The donuts are kind of delicious. And cookies. So good, right? So that carb cycling would really, I'm actually gonna flip this over and break it down and let Evans take a picture. It looks like you've been taking pictures, which is flattering, by the way. You're gonna switch to black here. So what night do you guys normally have rugby practice?
Monday, Wednesdays.
Monday and Wednesday.
The games on Saturdays.
Okay, so the writing got really small there at the end. So games on Saturdays, right? And then Wednesdays you've got practice, Mondays you've got practice, and then right now it's here at TFW, so it's
Yeah, right.
practice, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's this one.
Yeah, it's this one,
Oh,
this is their practice. And then outside of that, I mean, let's say, are there certain like protocols like, oh, hey, we do like on our own time, we're doing weightlifting on this day or cardio on this day.
Ideally, people should be working.
Ideally, yeah, right?
Ideally, people should be working out on their own. Yeah.
So let's say like Tuesdays and Thursdays, people are getting some extra workout in. I'm just gonna put W's for that. I'm gonna do it in red.
Getting D's. T's getting D's.
And then let's say Fridays are off and Sundays are off. Okay, this is just hypothetical. Okay. So wrestling Sunday, we got practice on Monday, practice on Wednesday, game on Saturday. Tuesday, Thursday, let's say you're doing some more workout, whether it's strength training or conditioning. And then Fridays and Sundays are off. So based on this, we're looking at Fridays and Sundays being low carb days. Absolutely. So I'm just going to put giant L's down here below. So Friday, Sunday being low carb days. Which days do you guys think would be the high carb days in a situation like this?
Monday, Wednesday.
Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, right? So, and then these Tuesday, Thursdays, this is going to be kind of a wild card. Like if someone, let's say, like is lifting heavy weights, it could be a higher carb day. So it kind of would depend. But let's say like someone's maybe just doing a little bit of light cardio on the off days. Because they're sore from practice, they're sore from practice again, and they don't want to get sore before a game, whatever it might be. So we'll say this is more of a medium day, right? Or you can either do medium or low. So you're looking at, boom, breaking it down like this. Now, for athletes, for people who are performing, who are trying to give and have the proper amount of fuel to perform at their optimum, perform at their peak, right? You can, technically speaking, consume, and it depends for body types, it depends for a lot of different reasons, but 60% of your total calories could come from carbohydrates, and it's not necessarily going to be a terrible thing. Because remember, carbs are not the enemy, all right? So let's say on these high days, so let's say like on the day of a game or a day that you're coming in, you're lifting heavy, having a high amount or a high ratio of carbohydrates is going to be beneficial. It's going to help you, it's going to help fuel your workouts, it's going to help you recover from your workouts, and it's going to help you perform optimally. Now these days that you're off, you could have significantly less. You could have you could reduce the amount of carbohydrates you're having by more than 50%. So let's say hypothetically speaking, you're having like 250 grams of carbohydrates on a high carbohydrate day. So on the days that you're playing a game, or the days that you're lifting weights, or the days that you're conditioning hard here at TFW. So it's a workout day, you're working really hard, you want those carbohydrates to be higher. You want to fuel your workout, right? Let's say you're having, and this is just a hypothetical number, let's say you're having 250 grams of carbohydrates on a high carbohydrate day. That's pretty high. You could go as low as like 100, so cut it by more than half on a low day, and then a medium day you could have it more like 150, 175, whatever, just like feeling good, like maybe you worked a little bit harder than you were expecting. You didn't just like go for a light jog, you kind of did some sprints, and you're like, you know what? I need a little bit more fuel. You can have a little bit more. But you can have this range, right? And you can really go high on the high days, low on low days. Now what this does, this carb cycling, like I said, it's gonna help you perform better, but it's also gonna help you in terms of getting rid of any excess fat, right? With our nutrition programming here at TFW, carb cycling is something that we work into phase 3 for every nutrition program we do, because it's something that's important. It's something that helps to, one, perform well in classes or in sport, but it also is going to help with losing excess fat. which, I mean, in rugby, is huge. A couple of less pounds is going to mean a quicker step and getting that little bit of separation you need to get the try, right? At least I know that it's called a try. I know that much about it. It could be worse. It could be worse. So these small tweaks, rather than just eating the same thing every day, you can fuel your body for what's happening the day that it's happening and give your body the fuel that it needs. Now, another key thing with carbohydrates, or with nutrients in general, is nutrient timing, all right? Now we're gonna get real fancy. I might even try to draw a vlog. So nutrient timing is something that's really critical. There it is. I'm not going to put all the ticks in there. It'll take far too long. So nutrient timing. So has anyone heard like, oh, eating carbs at night, totally bad, or eating food at night, totally bad, it's just to make you fat. You sit on it at night and you're just sitting and it just distorts fat, right? It's something that's been around. It's probably something I hear just about as much as carbs are the enemy, and it's not necessarily true. Now, eating the wrong things at night could be detrimental to your goals, but eating the right things at night could be helpful, in fact. So when it comes to carbohydrates and the timing of carbohydrates, it's critical. So there are 3 main times that I want you guys to focus on having your, well, it's, 3 main times, and it's described in one word that kind of makes sense. So it's called peri-workout. It's not a guy named Perry working out, but P-E-R-I, whoops. So the majority of your carbohydrates should come during this peri-workout time. So what that means is the time before, during, and after your workout. Yeah, so before, during, and after. So remember, we talked a little bit, I mentioned it briefly at least, that glycogen, muscle glycogen, right? So we want to have as much stored into our muscles before we exercise. So that's when before is going to be big. So you want to make sure you've got good fuel in you, whether that is like the night before, doing like some carb loading, or it could even be just a few hours before, making sure you've got the right kind of fuel in the system. Now, during, Gatorade, Powerade, sports beverages are obviously very, very popular, things like that. Having some carbohydrates during, especially when you're doing intense bouts of exercise that last longer than 60 minutes, having some sort of sports drink during is going to be helpful to keep you well fueled, right? So that way you're not just depleting all of your glycogen and then you're totally shot, right? And then afterwards, you want to be able to recover as best as possible. So you want to be able to replenish any lost muscle glycogen, and then your muscles are going to recover them. So what I want to break down is not only, I'm going to write it up here as well, we can grab another picture, that way it can be easily remembered, but I want to break down not only that you should have before, during, after, but I want to break down which types of carbohydrates are going to be the most beneficial before, during, and after, okay? So beforehand, the most important thing beforehand is to store as much muscle, or kind of saturate our muscle cells with that muscle glycogen, okay? So in order to do that, we don't necessarily need to have like a shot of nothing but like some sugar water, because we need those carbohydrates. This is a good time to have something that's more of a complex carbohydrate, okay? So who knows what complex carbohydrates are? Starches can be.
Heard it.
So there are complex and there are simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates actually take longer for the body to break down. So things like whole grains, or like say brown rice, or like stuff like quinoa, things like that, they are more complex and it takes longer for the body to break it down into the simple sugars that it uses within the body. Now something like just table sugar, or like honey, or any sort of refined sort of bread or pasta, that is a far more simple sugar, or a simple carbohydrate that is much more quickly and readily broken down into simple sugars that are used in the body. Okay, so those complex carbohydrates are going to be far better beforehand. So whether this is the night before or a few hours before. So let's say you've got a game at like 7 in the evening. I don't know what time the games are. That could be pretty late. But
Between 11 and 1.
so afternoon, yeah. So maybe you want to wake up and have, like oatmeal is something that's a nice complex carbohydrate, but something that's more of a complex carbohydrate that's going to stay in your system for longer. Because let's say you have like a tablespoon of honey, you're going to have that. It's going to break down quickly, and then it'll be gone. But if you have something that breaks down slowly, like oatmeal, or say brown rice, or maybe the night before, having like a whole wheat pasta party, whatever it might be, something that's going to take longer to break down is going to stick with you longer, and it's going to be able to be absorbed better. Okay. During your workout, that's where we're looking at like things like sports drinks. And then straight up water is obviously huge. Hydration is super important. Sports drinks. Okay, so we got sports drinks. Now, if we're thinking sports drinks are generally pretty high in sugar. They also taste great and have electrolytes in them as well. But as far as carbohydrates are concerned, they're nothing but simple carbohydrates that break down really, really quickly. So that's going to help to refuel your muscles right away, okay? So instead of just sitting there and being like, okay, I'm going to have some whole wheat toast, and then maybe it'll be broken down and the sugars will be in your system before the end of the night, it's going to be something that breaks down quickly and it's able to refuel you right away. You also get the nice extra replenishment of electrolytes that you're losing from sweat, things like that. So sports drinks are solid during. Again, if it's intense exercise, it's lasting for longer than 60 minutes, which, yeah, it's 90, right? That's what I thought. Right. And then the thing with rugby is it's definitely intense and it's kind of constant. There's hardly any breaks. You're running hard the whole time. So that's huge. Now, afterwards is an interesting spot. So post-workout nutrition, has anyone ever heard of, like, they call it the anabolic window? But after you exercise, you've got this magical window of like 30 minutes where you have to eat or you lose all of the gains with a C. I mean, it's something that's talked about. It's not as bad as people have made it out to be. So whether that post-workout nutrition is happening 30 minutes after the game or or the exercise or an hour afterwards, it's still going to be beneficial. You want to make sure that you eat to help replenish those glycogen stores. And if it's not within that magical 30-second anabolic window, like, it's not going to be the end of the world. So it's all about eating the good things to help restore the energy that was lost in the intense amount of exercise. Now, good things for afterwards are going to be those simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates are basically the opposite of complex. They're easy to break down, they break down quickly. So this is my favorite thing to mention to people I work with on nutrition. Let's say you just had a really intense bout of exercise, you're able to fit it into your numbers, and you really, really love Swedish fish. My dad absolutely loves red Swedish fish. He'll get giant bags of them, and he loves them. A couple years ago, he was like, I want to try to get healthier. I want to start doing things to be more fit. And I was like, all right, cool deal. But I want you to still have your Swedish fish. Like, what? So after you work out, after you lift weights, if it's a high-carb day, you can fit it into your numbers and it all works, that would be the optimal time to have whatever that guilty pleasure is. I've had people who've been like, I really love those caramel apple pops. Other people who love those Swedish fish like my dad. Maybe it's gummy bears, maybe it's sour gummy worms. But that little guilty pleasure, that little piece of candy that you enjoy, having some of it right after the workout isn't gonna derail your progress. If anything, it's gonna actually help you recover faster. It's gonna help you perform better the next day. So let's say you're coming off of practice and you're gonna go lift weights the next day. Recovery is gonna be better. You're gonna be ready to work out again. And it's gonna, if anything, it's just gonna be helpful. Because what happens is after working out, say 90 minutes of a rugby game, you come in here, 60 minutes of working hard at TFW. Come in, work hard, you leave, muscle glycogen is depleted all over the place. Think of your muscles like dry sponges just waiting to soak up the energy that you're about to give them. So you give them something that breaks down easily, whether it's like a handful of gummy bears or stored in a line of pixie sticks or whatever it might be, it's going to be absorbed into the muscles quickly because the muscles are just waiting for it. They're starved for it. So as soon as it's given, it's absorbed. Okay? So that's the best time to have kind of those guilty pleasures, to eat the things that you know you enjoy, but maybe you know you shouldn't have all the time. And it's right, you probably shouldn't snort pixie sticks all the time. I can see that going poorly on a lot of levels. But having some of those simple sugars right after an intense bout of exercise is not only going to help you recover better, it's going to help you perform better the next day. Okay? Your muscles are going to be ready to rock, ready to roll. You're not going to have to just like feel totally down. What's interesting is I've talked to people about this. I've suggested it, and they've looked at me like I'm crazy. Like, yeah, so have gummy bears right after you work out. Like, my coach is telling me to have gummy bears. This can't be right. Like, yeah, go ahead and have some gummy bears. Right? Like, okay. Now this is of course making sure that you're not going over the top and eating a 10-pound bag of gummy bears. But having some of that, maybe it's something you enjoy. It could be mangoes for all I care. It could be, I love dried mangoes. Oh my goodness. I have a problem with dried mangoes. So for me, like a handful of dried mangoes, boom. Quick digesting sugars, replenish the glycogen that's been lost during the intense bout of exercise, and you will recover better. You will notice a difference. I've had plenty of people come up to me like, you know what, Ben, I noticed a complete difference. I was able to feel this energy and this recovery that wasn't happening before. So it's something that absolutely happens. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys about as well. Did you already get a picture of this?
Yes, I did.
Good deal. Yeah, no, I want to make sure that you've got it. I'll wait for it to be lost forever. I mean, I guess the paper isn't going to disappear anytime soon, so take a picture later. But I wanted to put this quote up here on this board. So, that is supposed to be an S. I apparently didn't lift up the marker. So athletes, they don't exercise and diet. What they do instead is they eat and they train. Okay? So a lot of people will look at the things that people do is like, oh, you know, you're exercising and you're dieting. You get on this diet program, you eat next to nothing, and you exercise a lot, you'll lose fat, you'll maybe gain some muscle, you'll be able to be more fit. That's fine and dandy. But athletes don't exercise and diet. They eat and they train. They eat according to their goals and they train according to their goals as well. You guys, as rugby players, as athletes, this should be your mindset. It's not a matter of like, oh, I need to exercise more and I need to go on a diet. No, it's I need to eat. You just need to eat the right kind of fuel, and you need to train. Yeah, I was gonna say there should be a nice little T-Nation photo or something like that. That's the exact quote.
That's my first image of my training.
It's absolutely real. So, commercial gyms, interesting, cool. But athletes eat and they train. So we've talked a decent bit about the eating. It's all about making that happen. But they work in tandem. It's not just like you sit and you eat a little bit and you train, exercise or whatever. No, like they work in tandem, okay? So, I mean, you guys already have, a decent idea of what it is that TFW workouts are like. You guys have been here on Mondays, and those are our conditioning days. Nice and intense. It's always a party because the energy is through the roof when the Valkyries are here, which I love. Because there are so many people. Last week we had like 17 in class. Biggest class I've seen yet here at TFW. And it's always loud. It's always exciting. It's always fun. Now, that's one day of the week, right? Well, yeah, the calendar's gone. I was about to point to the calendar. It was like 3 pages ago. But one day out of the week, and you guys are getting a taste of that. But I want you guys to kind of imagine what would be able to happen if you were, say, working out 5 times a week, maybe 6 times a week, all specifically geared towards being better as a team for rugby, being able to perform at your best. And then on top of that, having nutrition laid out for you. Knowing exactly how to break down your carb cycle, knowing exactly how to break down your macronutrients. So you're not just your carbohydrates you should be having each day, but also your protein, also your fats, also the number of calories you should be having. That's something that we here at TFW want to do for you guys. That's something we want to help out with because it's critical. It makes a huge difference because exercise or better said, training and eating go hand in hand to create optimal performance. And that's something we want to help you guys be able to do. And that's it's really, it's hard to describe to you because I moved across the country, right? I came from California here to Boston to work at a gym. Now, I tell people this, like friends, they're like, well, hold on, what? You moved across the country to work at a gym, why didn't you just work at a gym out here? Because they're picturing me just like standing and like scanning people and thank you, have a great workout. But obviously that's not what we do here. The way TFW is it's different. The people we work with, they're athletes. We don't talk about clients, we talk about district members, and it blew my mind when I talked to Nathan the first time. He was asking me about people I trained at my old gym. He was like, so when you work with your athletes, I was like, I've never even considered them as athletes. But that's how it is here. We work with athletes. And our athletes eat and they train. And they perform well. And it's amazing because we are a strength and conditioning gym. We're not a big Globo gym like in dodgeball that's just having people chill on their cardio machines doing their thing. We get people to perform, right? And that's what we're all about. So what I want you guys to do now, I actually want you guys to take a second. I want you to close your eyes. You guys watching on the video, go ahead and take a second and close your eyes. And I want you to imagine, kind of look forward 1 year down the road. And imagine the sorts of things that you could accomplish. Kind of imagine the goals that you can make happen in this next year, right? I want those to be with rugby. I want those to be with weight loss or even maybe some muscle gain. I want that to be with strength. I want that to be with life. So I want you just to picture this image. 1 year down the road, all these different things you can do. Now I want you to imagine the goals that you would set if you knew you couldn't fail, right? So knowing all right, if I set this goal, it's going to be a reality. It's going to happen. So closing those eyes, really looking forward into that future and picturing it, right? So I want you to imagine reaching every single one of those goals, whether it's with rugby, with life, with weight loss, with strength, with muscle gain. Picture all of these goals becoming a reality. Think of it. How do you look? How are you feeling? How much better are you at rugby? How has your life improved? Think of those huge changes and the effect that it's had, right? Now I want you to go ahead and open your eyes, and I want, if people are willing, I would love to hear what some of your thoughts were. What sorts of things that you saw able to change in 1 year? If they're super personal, I guess it's okay to not share. But I would love to hear what sorts of thoughts you guys were having. It could have been like, this Ben guy is crazy, he's trembling in front of us. Hopefully it wasn't just that.
That hard work paid off. That we're not only a better team, but we are a winning team. That are filling out my emails with saying they want to do it.
Right? You might be one of the only people I've ever heard be like, I want my inbox really, really full with a lot of emails. But I salute that. I salute that. What other thoughts did you guys have as you were sitting there thinking forward 1 year down the road?
Someone pizza. Great beach.
Boom! We were all thinking it, right? We were all thinking it. Though I hope you wouldn't be trying to look great at the beach in February. And play great rugby. This is fantastic. I love how you tried to get out of the screen, but you definitely perfect. So, these changes can all become a reality. Who would want to see that happen? To see those changes, to become better, whether it's just looking better at the beach, being a better team, a winning team, having people wanting to come play the Valkyries, or even just whether it's at the beach or in front of the mirror, whatever it might be. So really, that's what it's all about. That's what this performance is. So not only performance in rugby, performance in life, and we want to get you guys to level up and take